Hi, everybody, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. You know, all over the country, thousands of students are walking out of schools because they say they've had enough. The protests are unfolding in major cities across the country, like New York, Washington, Chicago, and smaller towns and community, too. You see, most recently, students walked out of Anniston City schools, too, but oddly enough, those actions have really generated a lot of controversy. So when we come back, we'll be talking with a former Anniston City Schools resource officer to help us better understand why there is such a division regarding student protests. You know why? Because if it's local, it matters.
Dance. Let me see you move.
Everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. You know, all over the country, students are walking out of schools in protest of gun laws, but not everybody are giving the thumbs up on the walkouts. Joining me on the set of Local Matters is the mayor of Weaver and a former Anniston City Schools resource officer. We're talking about none other than Mr. Wayne Willis. Welcome aboard.
Nice to be here.
Good to
Thank you.
have you. You know, it's you were here on Local Matters, I guess about maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Time is flying by.
It does. It does.
Time is really, really flying. You know, with everything that's going on in the country, I thought about you, Wayne. You were one of the early pioneers of being a resource officer at Anniston High School. What year were you there at Anniston High School as a resource officer?
I was there mid-90s through early 2000s.
Wow. So almost right at maybe 20 years ago?
Yes.
What were you really dealing with when you were at Anniston High School? What were the problems there?
Right. At that time, Anniston had a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of violence in school, gang-related, and it was a real mess, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It was so bad that we had some allegations of a sexual assault which took place inside the school. We had Anniston's SWAT team patrolling the halls.
Wow.
That's when the council realized we've got to put another officer back in the schools to try to get some kind of semblance of balance. So
Right.
basically, they pulled the SWAT team out and dropped me in.
Okay.
So that first year was tough
It was tough.
because inner city kids don't trust the police to begin with.
Right.
And I was
right.
the uniformed officer, and it's a predominantly minority school.
Right.
And I was a white police officer, so there were some hurdles, and it was tough. That first year, I arrested over 30 students
Wow.
on different charges, ranging from disorderly conduct and fighting to, just the standard drug-related type charges, that kind of thing. But there was over 30 arrests that first year. It was rough.
We're talking about, again, the mid-90s, the late 90s, and now. But there were no guns. Even after, in all of that, guns were not an issue.
And that's correct. My entire time at Anniston High School, I can't remember a single gun case or gun charge being made. In fact, I don't recall ever having to deal with any firearms in the school.
Right. Basically fights.
Fights, oh yeah. They were fighting. They would fight a lot.
You know, who would have think that now, as a country, that we would be sitting here talking about, there were fights, and that's all it was a fight, because we're probably saying now that we wish that was all that we were dealing with, is a fight.
Right.
Yeah.
It's scary times, and I don't see an end in sight.
What do you think has really happened between 1998 and let's say now 2018? What do you think has happened?
My personal opinion is society has changed in the sense that we don't have as much interaction as we used to have. You don't have that person-to-person dealings like we used to have. Everything is
yes.
social media, and you do things from a keyboard in the privacy of your home or your phone, and you're not actually dealing face-to-face. So I think some of the younger people that are coming up now, they don't have the skills to deal with confrontation or bullying or just dealing with the day-to-day things that we as adults know how to deal with. I don't think they're dealing with it.
Right.
And then another that compounds the problem is I think we have a very serious mental health issue that we're going to have to address.
Right. You know, I was sitting here thinking, this actually happened. Most people know that I grew up in Chicago. I started kindergarten all the way until like the 10th grade, and then moved to Connecticut with my mother. But I remember in Chicago, and this is the south side of Chicago. It was not the same south side that it is now, but there were fights, there were problems. You had to defend yourself. And I never forget, there was a young girl, her name is Christina Hudson. I'm kind of wondering now, she was related to Jennifer Hudson of Chicago. But this girl just did not like me, and she sat directly behind me. And so my jacket was on my seat, and it had fallen on the floor. And so, and I believe she had actually, threw it on the floor. So I picked it up. And when I picked it up, I was angry, and the zipper hit her in the mouth. And she was like, oh, now. Oh, it's going to be, oh, now I'm going to get you at 3:15. That was when school got out. So everybody knew it was going to be a fight at 3:15. And so here I am. I was like, oh, Lord, I'm so scared, because this girl was an athlete. She could beat boys, And so it was all talk of us at school. It's going to be a fight, going to be a fight. And sure enough, she followed me off school grounds, and there was a fight. But I'm sitting here thinking, how am I going to win? And actually won the fight. But when we got back on school the next day, we were called in for counseling sessions, and the principal heard about it. We were called in. I think my mother had to come to school, her mother. But the next year, even later on in that year, we became best friends. And Christina Hudson and I became best friends from 7th grade all the way up until I actually moved away from Chicago. And so it brought to mind what you were saying about how it seems that kids are not talking face to face anymore.
Right.
They're not dealing with issues like we dealt with when we were coming up.
Right. And if you take out of the mix the shootings like Nevada and Vegas and that kind of thing, most of the school shootings are students that go to that school or were just recently expelled from that school. They have a connection to that school. You rarely see a situation where it's just an outsider that went to a certain school just because they wanted to kill people. Right. Or to kill children. Right. So I think part of the curriculum is going to have to be anger management and peer mediation. Yes. And grievance resolution to teach these younger people how to deal with issues when they're confronted versus automatically going to violence. Well, we've got to go to break, though. But when we come back, though, I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about so much more because, again, the walkouts that have really generated controversy. And, of course, it seems as though many people felt as though Anniston High School students were really berated on social media. So I want to talk about that aspect when we come back. We'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Local Matters. I'm Dottie Rimsey. Welcome back to Local Matters. We're living local, never felt so good. I've been sitting here talking with the mayor of Weaver, Mr. Wayne Willis. He's also was a former school resource officer at Anniston High. So we've been sitting here talking most of the morning about gun violence, not only in our country, but certainly in our schools. And most recently, students just sort of physically got up out their seats and decided to walk out in protest of gun violence in this country. And it seems as though on social media that the Anniston High School students had really taken a beating. There was a lot of controversy about them getting up, walking out, and exercising their civil rights. Some say had that been Oxford students or Weaver students or anybody else, that would not have been the case. What do you think about that, Wayne? I don't think it's racial. In fact, I don't think there's anything racial about young people wanting to march now. I think marching may be overrated. I think we're a little too quick to march and protest if you don't know all the facts.
Yeah.
And that's where I think all of the friction came from, because a group decided we're going to march against whatever their issue is, but they don't really have a clear-cut issue. I mean, if you think back to, and this was my generation, if you think back to the marches of the 60s, there was a clear-cut problem and a clear-cut answer why they were protesting, and they knew why they were protesting, and they got results because of that. Just to march and protest for the sake of marching is not going to get results, and I think we're setting our young people up for failure and even more frustration when they don't get the results because they did hold a march.
Well, what do you think they were marching for? Because many are saying, I just want to feel safe in my school. Many are starting to feel as though I'm next. Who's next? And they're starting to feel that I just want to be safe. What do we have? What measures do we have in place for safety? And because I don't think they're really fighting for anything bigger than that. And you mentioned they may not even really know what they're fighting for.
Right.
But clearly we know that they're fighting because they want to feel safe.
Sure. And they should worry
Yeah.
because it's going to happen here.
Yes.
It will happen. It's sad to say, but it is going to happen in Calhoun County. And we just have to accept that. The problem is there's no magic wand to wave over this problem and fix it.
Yeah.
There's no one vote in government that can change it. It's a culmination of multiple problems. It's the inability to deal with conflict.
Yes.
It's mental illness. It's social media magnifying the problems and making it worse. So it's a combination of a lot of things. School safety does play into the mix, and school security does play into the mix. But no school can be made safe. I'm going to tell you that right out of the gates. There is no way that you can make a school that no one can walk into. It won't happen. We have a saying in law enforcement, if somebody wants to shoot you, they're going to shoot you.
They'll find a way.
All you can do is prepare and respond.
And speaking of that, this is a whole nother issue now. Teachers being armed with guns. I'm like, really? Seriously? Have we come down to that now? All right, guys, you know, we come down to the point where I'm saying, all right, guys, I'm getting ready to go to work, honey. I've got my books in my hand, my lunch, and my gun, and I'm going into the 3rd grade class to teach. Or have we come down to that as a country?
I have a lot of concerns about that plan. And some of the concerns would be, one, when you think of school, you think of little elementary school kids.
Yes.
But when you think of a high school, there's some football players in high school that are 6'4", 280 pounds.
Right.
And if you have a teacher that's 5 foot, 110 pounds, it would be pretty easy to take a gun away from her.
Yeah.
So
But then I see on the other hand, she's 5 foot, you know, she's 5 feet, she's 110 pounds, and so there are 2 students in the class causing some type of, you know, I don't know, some type of fight or whatever, and she's afraid. She's afraid now, okay? And she's trying to get them to stop, and they're not listening. They're not even paying her any attention at all. But she's got her gun, and all of a sudden, it looks like one is rushing towards her. And she comes out, and pow. Now what?
yeah, it's scary. Now, I would not be opposed to teachers exercising their Second Amendment right if they choose to be armed. But if our plan for defense is going to be arming teachers, we better plan it all the way through because there's a lot of issues that are going to have to be resolved first.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that too. I mean, we don't even have money right now to help teachers buy school supplies. You know, teachers are out buying Kleenex and glue and paper. Where are we going to find the money to help teachers buy guns, training? Where are we going to do that? Are we that country again that we're down to? I'm not going to help you find money to buy glue and paper, but I will help you get a gun. You know,
It's scary times. And I think we've gotten to the point where parents are desperate, and we're just grasping at anything at this point to try to get a handle on the problem. Kids should not be afraid to go to school.
And they are, though.
And parents shouldn't be afraid that their child's not going to come home in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So we've got some problems.
We've got some problems. When we come back, too, I want to talk about, we were talking earlier, great solutions you were talking about. I think that we need to really talk about those. And I would like for you to share them with us because I think they're great solutions. Where do we go from here? As you mentioned, we've got a lot of problems, and it's not going to get any better. It's not like all of a sudden it's just going to stop and go away. Time, you know, change takes time. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the little things that we can do. We'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Local Matters. I'm Dottie Rimpsey. Welcome back to Local Matters. We're living local, never felt so good. I'm sitting here and joined here on the set of Local Matters with the mayor of Weaver, Mr. Wayne Willis. And he was also in the past, he was a Anniston resource officer. So he knows all too well about the different problems that can happen in schools. But oddly enough, when you were there working, Wayne, in Anniston High School, back in the 90s, guns were not a real big factor. But here's the thing, neither was social media.
Correct.
Neither was social media. And you talked about, you believe in your heart of hearts that social media has a lot to do with what's going on with this anger that's going on, people going and getting guns.
I do. And I think it's because the younger generation that's coming up now doesn't know how to interact. They don't know how to deal with anger or conflict or to resolve the conflict. it builds and builds into a point to where they just erupt into violence. So I think part of the school's curriculum is going to have to be an anger management program, a peer mediation program, and conflict resolution. You've got to teach these kids how to deal with conflict. And it may be something as simple as dealing with the power company on your power bill, or it might be somebody that backed into your car. But you've got to be able to deal with it as rational adults.
I like that. You know, and that would not really cost a lot of money.
No.
That would be simply partnering with someone, having a collaborative relationship with a company or a nonprofit organization, and bringing these people into the schools. Because most kids, and you're right, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. I really do from my heart. Because most kids, they do not know how. Even my own kids, sometimes they will get so upset because they went somewhere and somebody said something they didn't like, and I'm like, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. I mean, I've seen people in lines at the power company about to just totally blow up because their light bill, because they were charged more than they should have been charged. They felt the bill was too high.
Right.
We see people out here driving almost about to kill each other because they're afraid somebody's going to get in front of them or beat them to the red light. It's just really, it really is sad.
And I think that's where the core of the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're addressing school safety and talking about the security of the building.
Yes.
But let me give you this example.
Okay.
If you look at a prison, you have 16-foot gates with barbed wire. You have armed guards and towers around the building. You have the top line security. Everything is buzz you in, buzz you out. You have correctional officers walking the halls. Everybody's locked down, but you still have escapes. So no matter what security you implement in a school, somebody is going to come in at some time. You cannot keep them out. So instead of focusing on the building security, which is important, but that's not the fix. The fix is address the problem before it gets to the point that person wants to go into a school and shoot it up. You
sound just like, you sound, because what you were for years, you sound just like a police officer. And I teach this a lot in my public relations class, even with companies. We're so, most of the time, we're so busy worrying about what's coming in to hurt us. But usually it starts right in the home. You guys, police officers, always work from what? The inside out.
Yes.
Trouble in organizations and companies start from inside out. We need to be working in, as you mentioned, and I like that, inside out. Inside schools to help us better understand, our children understand, how do we deal with conflict? Because you're not going to live in this world without conflict.
Oh no, that's a fact of life.
Every day I get up and just say, please let me just get to Jacksonville and Talladega without somebody trying to run me over. Please, can these big trucks not try to run me over?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's a great solution. I think it's just chipping away at it. Wayne, it's good to have you here to talk about this because, as you and I both mentioned, it's not gonna go away anytime soon.
No, it's going to get worse.
And you mentioned you think it will be heading our way. I mean, we've already had some issues already. I mean, we had a scare at your school, Weaver. Was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Right, and that turned out to be a hoax. It was just somebody called it in. But you never know if that's somebody testing the response time with police.
Only you would think like that, though.
Yeah, so there's different possibilities of the way the scenario plays out. But it's going to happen here. It's going to happen.
And then there was some problems in Jacksonville.
Yes, it's going to.
And then was there something in Oxford not too long ago?
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And we just know about the things that reach the media.
Exactly.
You don't know about the things that take place at the school that the principals deal with and never actually makes it to the news.
That's right. Never actually call. But I do like that again. I like that as a solution, that we've got to start thinking about working from the inside out.
Core of the problem.
Working with our kids, helping them conflict resolution. And what about the heart? What about really just working from the heart of matters? I know that sounds so cliche, but what about the heart? What about loving one another again? You're right. We're so busy doing this and texting and sending messages that we don't even get a chance to really look at one another anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Tolerance.
I want to thank you for coming on Local
Thank you.
Matters.
Anytime.
Thank you. And I want to thank you too for joining us. You know why? Because if it's local, it certainly does matter. We'll see you back here next week. Good night.